turning it into a panic so that people may purchase more from their sources in order to, like, you better stock up, buddy, because this is the only stuff you're going to get for a long time, you know?
I've seen labs start to advertise about the fact that they have plenty of stock and that it's not a concern and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I can, without doubt, I can see it being exaggerated because it'll push sales.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. All of our programming is brought to you by you, the people of Patreon. Thank you guys very much for your support. We especially make sure that we tackle your questions from Patreon. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post them up over there. You guys get priority. We are also brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. That's Dave's company. You can get your lab work done by Dave if you live in the UK. Plus, you get all sorts of information afterward. Dave will give you information about your labs and basically what you've had done and what you need to do to improve those labs. We are brought to you by Strom Sports Nutrition for those of you in the UK. And you can go there if you're on cycle to get all sorts of great health supplements and health stacks because you're going to need them. We're also brought to you by supplementsource.ca for Canadians, guys. They have great deals that change week to week. Dave Crosland, what's up?
Got a question, political one.
Ooh, I don't know. We do political ones, Dave. What's your question?
So Donald has said that he's putting a levy on all imported Canadian products into America because of drug trafficking and immigration and all this crap.
I saw that, yeah. What about it? What's your question? So
will that mean that .ca, they're not going to be able to sell to the States anymore, they're not?
They don't anyway. They don't anyway.
Oh, right.
No. Yeah, they're just a Canadian-based company. Yeah, so they're basically just there for Canadians. Yeah.
Oh, that's racist.
No, it's a border thing. It's shipping. It's a shipping thing is what it is, Dave. Yeah, but they do have good deals over there. I've seen pre-workouts for like $10. I saw the Granite Recovery product for like half price. So, all these things, you get really good deals over there. But anyway, Dave, we're going to jump into a bunch of listener questions. We're backstocked on listener questions. After this, we're going to need more. But yes, Dave, question?
I've got some steroids in the news.
I do too. So yeah, let's do those first. What's your steroids in the news?
Yeah, you first. In case yours is the same as mine, and then I'm not taking it away from you.
I don't think it is. I just found this absolutely fascinating. In the Netherlands, people are always trying to smuggle things in unique ways. We could talk about gear companies and how they've delivered their products. Sometimes it's pretty stealth, and they've been pretty creative in how they get their packaging into the country. But I thought this was pretty ingenious. So this was in the Netherlands. This is a garden gnome. Check that out, Dave. This is a garden gnome, and it's made of pure MDMA. And during the drug bust, they found this. So they're importing these things, and they're just like, oh, it's a garden gnome.
Oh, well, there was a film where they were importing something, and it was in religious statues.
That was on The Gentleman.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. But those were like they were filling the statues. The statue is made out of it. It's not made out of concrete. It's made out of MDMA.
Yeah, what you doing crawling around the garden licking the gnome for?
Yeah. That's incredible, man. And I don't know how much that thing weighed, but it had to be freaking hefty. It was like in the kilograms.
Okay. So,
okay. What's yours?
That's not really steroids, though, is it?
No, it was just drugs in the news.
So, there's been a bit of a panic over here that there's going to be a big raw shortage. I know we've had this before.
Yeah.
So the story I got was legislation change, etc., etc. Apparently pressure from the States. I don't know how true that bit is. And basically the current situation is that the actual factories that make the raws, there's only 3 or 4 of them. Okay, and they make legit raws for the pharmaceutical industry.
Right. And a little on the side.
Well, this is what happens. So what a lot of these different lab sellers that you see, raw powder suppliers, they're just individual Chinese people that act as basically like brokers.
Right.
and they sell all sorts, but they're all going to the same factories to get it. And the factories were quite happy to let a kilo go here, half a kilo go there, because it was no interest to them, and everybody was making a bit of money.
Right.
Now, apparently they've clamped really down on that, and China's said, no, none. Nothing can go out unless it's licensed. It's got to be accounted for. It's got to be this, that, and the other. Now, we've had something similar in the past, and it did cause a little bit of disruption. The story goes that China's not sending out any raws until the end of January or sometime in January.
Okay.
So all labs are reliant on their stock.
Yeah.
Now, I spoke to 2 suppliers that I know in China. Again, these are just the brokers, they're not the factories. They've been very cagey, which straight away makes me think there's some truth in this.
Mm-hmm.
They've basically admitted there's going to be some stoppages, but then got into a reassurance, but we have plenty of stockpile stock. We have this, we have that, sitting in a European warehouse or sitting in an American warehouse or whatever it is.
Right.
And I'm like, so I'm not interested. I'm not buying anything. I'm just curious as to whether you can verify the stoppage and the genuine reason behind it.
Yeah.
But it does seem like there's been a bit of a shake-up again in China, which I think happened about 2 years ago, didn't it?
It was a little bit longer than that. It was like 2019, because we recorded that episode when I was in Vancouver, and there was that whole thing about how they were going to discontinue certain compounds, right? Like they were going to discontinue things like Anavar and Superdrol and things that didn't have like the correct medical licensing or something, you know?
The thing is, there was a bit of a disruption, and some of the suppliers did drop out off the back of that. So there were some branded suppliers that just didn't exist anymore after that. Now, I can't see, the demand is so great.
Yes, bingo.
That even if it ended up becoming completely illicit in China, I can't see the supply chain stopping, but I can see the supply chain potentially getting more expensive if they have to take more risks to get it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I heard about this, Dave, a good week or 2 back, and my due diligence was to bring it to the podcast, and guess what? I forgot. I totally forgot. But here's my thought, man. These things, they're constantly happening. If you really start looking at the nuts and bolts of it, there's always these things. Sometimes what I want to, I guess, caution everybody is what I've seen on a couple message boards is this being weaponized, turning it into a panic, so that people may purchase more from their sources in order to, like, you better stock up, buddy, because this is the only stuff you're going to get for a long time, you know?
I've seen labs start to advertise about the fact that they have plenty of stock and that it's not a concern and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, without doubt, I can see it being exaggerated because it'll push sales.
Yeah.
Which is a bit ridiculous, really, because it only pushes sales in the short term. People aren't going to increase their drug consumption because there's a short supply. They're only going to buy more stock in now, but then they're not going to buy any stock in a month or 2 months' time because they don't need it.
Yes and no. I'll tell you what, if I have, let's say I have 10 vials of everything, the likelihood of me deciding to push the dose higher is going to be greater than if I only have 2 vials of everything. You know what I mean? So the potential is that maybe people will use more gear. But, I'm not going to argue with you on that because I think you are right. It's going to be, the difference would be minimum. It's not like illicit compounds where, you keep supplying, there's going to be more demand kind of thing. It's different, right?
Yeah. I mean, I said, it does seem to be some genuinity with it, but to what extent, I'm still trying to find out because my Chinese people aren't speaking to me.
Well, I'll go back to I think it was 2007, maybe. Operation Raw Deal, it was called. They took out 20 major domestic sources that were responsible for some pretty serious distribution within the U.S. They also, at the time, we had domestic places like the Genosha company that everybody sends everything off to. We had 2 places within the U.S. that you could send compounds off to. And you could get it tested cheaply. It was domestic, so it was easy. You didn't have to send it overseas. And so all the labs were all being tested off of these places. In order for you to do business on a message board, you had to have proof from these labs, and they constantly were testing the stuff to make sure the quality was good. So Operation Raw Deal shut the ability down to do domestic testing on controlled substances, which, come on, all they did was let us hurt ourselves then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a bit of a stupid move from either a harm reduction basis or just even a drug usage management basis, because like you say, you push it more underground. You don't impact the supply chain. You don't impact people's willingness to use. You just force them to go to less reliable sources, and as a result, potentially develop more problems.
Yeah, so that was shut down. These 20 key sources were shut down, RIP GA Labs. And it dramatically altered the scene for a while. Like, the prices were so low at that time within the US. I want to say that like fast acting test was around like 10 to 15 for 10 mil. And after that, it like you couldn't get anything for a short period of time. And then when you could get it, it was all international, and we're talking like 90 for the same vial. So it went from 15 per vial, 10, 15 per vial to 90. You know, so there was probably a 6-month period where we did. That was probably the worst one I ever saw. It was Operation Raw Deal. And of course, then though, you cut off the head of a dragon, and guess what happens? 2 more appear. You know what I mean? Like you said, there's a demand. There's going to be people to fill that.
Yeah, and I think if the labs start trying to exploit the situation and up prices, there's always going to be somebody willing to undercut them.
Yes.
So, because there is a real danger that if prices go up, that they stay up, because people just get used to paying it. But there's always someone that's willing to undercut them. So I think prices will, even though they may raise initially, I think they will settle back down in time. But yeah, it does seem to be fairly substantial anyway, even for the next month or two. But it's Christmas anyway, so just come off, guys, and get fat and chill.
And then we do have the Chinese New Year coming up,
which is always a twat as well.
Yeah. Which anybody who knows, there's no shipping during, what is it, like a month, basically?
Well, it feels like that. Anyway, there's nothing. And yeah, there is absolutely nothing. All you get is Chinese New Year.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, that was last week. No, it's Chinese New Year. Oh, for fuck's sake.
All right. Well, listen, guys, we have a bunch of questions for you. And if you want to take part in the next show, you can comment below or comment on Patreon. We do our best to get all the questions out that we can. That said, you guys send in a bunch, and we appreciate it because it helps to boost the programming. All your comments do, all that stuff. So be sure to like and share the show. All those things, you guys are definitely helping to help the show grow, Dave. That's what they're doing.
Okay.
He stopped listening. He got a text or something? And he just he went back to work. He's not even hearing me right now.
No, I'm actually messaging one of my China contacts.
Are you really?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Question for the next show. What's the best way to hydrate after a workout? Also, what's the best way to stay hydrated during days? Just water, or do you put something in it?
I would say electrolytes, particularly post, because you're going to get a real drop in salts post cardio, post exercise. You can overdo the electrolytes, so I wouldn't go mental on them, but I would definitely incorporate at least 1 electrolyte drink per day. Yeah. And maybe a bit more on a training day, so you'd have 1 post-workout and maybe 1 in the morning or something of that nature, just to help with hydration. Yeah,
I think that's a good move. I'll tell you what, man, electrolytes are so popular now. I wish I knew about these 10, 15 years ago and how important they were. Number 1, salt, I would say, by the way. Get plenty of salt. Get some good pink Himalayan sea salt. Put that into all your meals. You know, sodium is so important for the contractility of the muscle and your endurance. So, 10, 15 years ago, I would come into the gym. I train legs on Saturdays because we had less work and physical job, I'd come in there just zapped after a full day. But Saturday was the lighter day, and it was still hot. It was still a lot of work. I'd come in and just zapped, and then I'd just drink like a pre-workout to get my energy up, and then just force myself through a hard leg day. And sometimes I felt just really fatigued, weak. And I wish I knew about electrolytes, because that's the key. You know, what I was experiencing was dehydration. The key to having a good workout is being hydrated. And his question was, you know, what should you take? Like, my thought is like, don't get dehydrated in the first place, you know? So good electrolyte in the morning. If you're doing a physical job, a good electrolyte again an hour before you train, if you train after work. Plenty of fluid. Get at least a gallon in. But keep in mind, though, that depending on your work, depending on how hot it is outside, the environment, you might need more on some days, you know?
It's also worth noting, and I think people don't realize this, that when you get dehydrated, you don't rehydrate in a day. It takes several days, can even be as long as a week, to fully rehydrate.
Yes.
So say you go out on a Saturday night and have a few beers, you're dehydrated Sunday morning, you're probably not going to be fully hydrated again until Thursday or even Friday of the week.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So it is something you do need to be conscious of. And it's very easy to fall off the wagon with it as well, because it does take a conscious effort to drink decent amounts of fluids, but you will feel better for it. You'll sleep better, your skin will feel better, your eyes will be fresher, and you will actually increase your strength.
Yep. I tell my clients to make sure that they always have water with them, because if you say have a half-hour commute to work each day and you don't have water available during that commute, I can guarantee you there's 1 hour of the day that you're not getting fluids in. So the number one thing is just always have fluids available. In that way, whenever you think about it, just take a drink. If you do get behind, it's hard to catch back up. All right.
You got a visitor.
Oh, who do you got here? Is it Bob here?
He's gone.
Where'd he go?
He's gone back out.
Why'd he leave? I hear his nails.
Yeah, he says he doesn't like you.
I like Bob.
Oh, Bob's going in a week.
Is he?
Yeah.
What's your guys' opinion on daily microdosing as opposed to every other day shots of short esters, mainly on Tren Ace? Could daily injections improve sleep, as this has affected the most? Thanks, Scott.
I personally don't think there's any advantage from a chemical point of view between ED, EOD. But I do see benefits from a minimization of sides potentially with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's to do with where your blood's peak. So obviously post-injection, even with a fast actor, or even with a slow actor, you're going to get this plasma peak within sort of, with an nth, you're talking 24, 36 hours. With an acetate, you're talking less. If you're injecting every day, obviously the dose is lower, so the peak is lower. And because the peak is lower, it triggers less side effects. There is argument that if you get blood plasma too stable, you will increase drug clearance, which is what is terminalized as the terminal half-life. So there is the potential, and I don't genuinely know how this will carry out into the real world, that you could actually end up with lowering circulating levels after a period of, say, 5 or 6 weeks, because your bloods get too stable and then the body starts to clear the drug out faster.
Yeah.
And increase metabolism. So how much benefit there is against offsetting negatives from sides, I suppose, is very much down to a personal individual. But I think if you're having to dose Tren at a microdose daily to cope with it, then I would potentially sort of suggest that maybe Tren's just not a drug for you.
I found daily or even every other day to be really effective with Tren.
Yeah, I think EO day is reasonable. I think when you start going to daily, the other thing is as well, and I don't think people consider this, every time you inject, one, you create scar tissue. Okay, with an insulin pin and low dose, it's going to be minimal, but you also open the risk for infection every single time.
Absolutely, and people are kind of cavalier about that nowadays with their everyday shots of everything they do, you know?
Yeah, and I think people don't, they sometimes forget that you know, the more you inject, the greater the risk is of some form of infection, abscess, or whatever it may be. And I think anyone that's used antibiotics for any length of period will have at least one shit shot story.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it's not like it doesn't fucking happen. It does.
Yeah. All right. We've talked about this before. I missed this question a few times, so I want to make sure I get it in here because he had been asking a few weeks in a row. What would be your stack for a combat sport athlete competing in the enhanced games? Let's say you're coaching a 180-pound fighter who has 20 weeks to get ready for a fight with all PEDs are legal. He's got to stay below 215 and needs enough endurance to fight 3 times in a day. What if the fighter was injured? Thanks, guys.
So, fucking hell, that's a set of scenarios, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think the enhanced games is actually going to be a free-for-all when it comes to drug use. I do think there's going to be some limitations there, isn't there?
We'll find out from Victoria. So, guys, Victoria is going to be on the council for the enhanced games, I guess. She's traveling over to Oxford at the beginning of December. And so we'll find out more from her about all that, if she's allowed to talk about it. You know, once it's open to the public, I'm sure she'll tell us. But that said, so my first question to him would be, says he's got to stay below 215. But what does he weigh now? Like, is he 240 and he's got to drop down? Or is he already 215?
I thought he said he was 180.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, so there's no issue then. Yeah, you did. I missed that. 180 pounds. Fighter in 20 weeks. He's not going to get above 215. If anything, he's going to get lighter, you know?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to put 35 pound of muscle on in that period of time. Not as a boxer.
And a matter of fact, dude, if you start gaining a bunch of weight like that, you're going to be freaking slow by the time you get there, you know?
I mean, one of the thing is, you know, more is not always a better idea, particularly in something of this nature. I'd probably go a moderate test dose base, sort of 300 maybe, and then I'd either be a DHT, Primo, or Mast. Probably Mast prior to Primo, just because of the risk of estrogen getting too low as I push the dose up. And maybe look at some T-Bow. And that would be pretty much where I'd be at with it. I don't think I'd be wanting to push any more in there. That's going to give him some good speed and accuracy. There's not going to be a huge amount of weight gain, but his explosive power should improve quite well, and it shouldn't have a particularly significant impact on his cardiovascular capabilities either.
Yeah. Doses are always going to be low for a performance athlete compared to what we do in bodybuilding. I could see, you know, a little bit extra test, especially starting at 20 weeks out, maybe 300 milligrams. And a low dose of EQ is where I would go for endurance. You know, if you could run that all the way into the fight, I think that's going to be a fantastic move. Fighting, we need freaking endurance. So another good one that I like to use is injectable L-carnitine, and we'll run that. You know, that's going to be later on. We're not starting that 20 weeks out, but maybe the last 8 weeks, you know, taper that up. GW 501516 Cardarine. I've used Cardarine multiple times with fighters, and I've had a lot of good success with Anavar, and then adding Halo in at the very end. But when we talk about these doses, we're talking like 10 milligrams of Anavar, maybe 20 at the absolute most. Halo, 10 milligrams at the very end, something like that. And we test these things out ahead of time. So the Halo would just be for like the fight itself, going in a few days out. And I'd want to test that a few weeks out to see how does he respond? How does he handle it? Does he keep his head straight? You know, all those things.
Yeah. Sorry, China just answered me back. So, but
what did he say?
They're still being very vague.
What did he say?
Said that no manufacturers are producing it at the moment, but they haven't given me any reasons as to why.
Oh, okay. All right, we had a question that I couldn't understand his grammar last week. It was a big, long paragraph with no periods, and he says, sorry about my grammar, I'll rephrase that. Since you guys did a deep dive on Deca, can you go over NPP? That was pretty simple. So let me ask you this, Dave. How does NPP differ from Deca now that we did our whole deep dive into Deca?
It's faster. It's a greater concentration milligram per milligram.
Mildly, right?
Yeah, mildly. I think it's about 80 milligrams per 100 mg. I think
it's like 60. It's low. It's pretty close to being the same as Deca. It's one of those weird esters.
Oh, right, okay. I'm wrong with that then. I apologize. I thought it was about the 80 mark, or mid-70s.
I'll look it up as you talk here.
I find it very weird, and this isn't, and I mean this genuinely, because the drug, the hormone is exactly the same. It's the ester that changes.
Yeah.
So that does affect how it peaks in the body, and NPP will peak very rapidly. But for other extent, the hormone's exactly the same, and yet the differences people report in experiences between Deca and NPP is quite significant, and enough to make you think that they're two completely different bloody compounds. And I don't quite get why. I'm sure it's something to do with peaks and troughs of the hormone. You're going to achieve a bigger baseline with Deca. Because its half-life's quite long, it's going to overlay quite a bit, and you're going to end up with quite significant levels circulating. That's more difficult to achieve with NPP.
Yeah. Simply
just because it's in quick, and you would be dosing such high doses in order to match a high dose, of Deca. So I think it's just total exposure that changes between the two drugs. But other than that, they should be exactly the same, but they're not. I don't understand why they're not. Maybe Clever Scott can help with that one. Maybe that's something to push to Clever Scott.
Yeah, it'd be a fun topic. So, okay, ester weight. Anathate, you get 70 milligrams of compound, meaning 30 milligrams is ester weight. Cypionate, it says 69 milligrams of compound. Now, decanate, you get 62 milligrams because the ester is super long. Now get this, phenylpropionate, you get 66. So it's pretty damn, it's pretty damn similar, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those weird esters for sure.
It's a big ester is that for a fast actor.
It really is.
Yeah.
All right, how about the... Oh, so I don't know what this guy's question was. He says, Scott, thanks for brushing my question under the carpet for the third time. So no ringing the bell or any buttons for you, sir.
I agree. You're a wanker, Scott.
Listen, guys, I do my best to try to get on all the questions we can. In fact, if it's important, brother, if it's that important, just leave it on Patreon. We put priority in Patreon, or you could hire Dave or myself to do a consultation with you. We'll spend a half hour, 30 minutes, or an hour. It's up to you. And we could go very deep into the topic. We'd be happy to.
Basically, what Scott's saying is, if you don't pay me, fuck off.
I
disagree with that. I think he's mercenary. I think that's uncalled for. I think that's awful. I fully sympathise with you, and I agree he is a complete and utter tosspot.
Listen, if he posted the question again, I might have had a better chance of reading it. But I honestly, I do my best. But a lot of times, here's what happens. I do the show with Dave, and Dave hems and haws about doing questions all day. And then I don't get to do all the questions. Otherwise, guys, I would do all the questions, but Dave gets real angry if you have too many questions.
The bottom line is, guys, we don't ignore anybody deliberately unless it is a proper dumbass question.
Maybe it was a really bad question. No.
I'd say, unless it's a
we haven't got any real bad ones in a while. We haven't got any real bad ones in a while. We have a pretty good audience overall.
We don't ignore people. So if your question doesn't get answered, it is a genuine oversight. It's not because we don't like you. It is because Scott's a wanker, and there's nothing I can do about that.
All right, for everybody else besides him, guys, please hit the bell if you haven't already. If you're new to our content, please subscribe, because we have a bunch of podcasts that come out each week. And it's the only way you'll know. If you hit the bell, it's the only way you'll know when we have new stuff come out. When dosing Aromasin, should it be should I dose it during the week based off of the day I take my test dose? Like same day, the day after? How do you do that, Dave? I'll tell you how I do it.
Well, Aromasin's got quite a decent length of half-life, so I wouldn't be super critical. Generally, I put it with the injection day just because for most people it's easier to remember.
That's not a bad idea.
But if they're having, like, most of the times it's going to be a similar protocol, but you will get occasions when it has to be a greater protocol, and obviously that changes it completely.
I'll do the day after. You know, I could see that, yeah, it's going to be, and for myself even, man, if I need an AI, I'm probably better off taking it the same day, like you suggested. But I tell my clients, take it the day after the shot. That way, well, you know, that's where we really can catch some of that conversion.
Yeah, you've got to remember that the test doesn't convert to estrogen immediately. You know, there is a lag. And this is a thing that a lot of people forget when they come off. So test levels will start to decline quite rapidly, but estrogen is going to stay elevated for a week, possibly even longer. And it's because that estrogen is still reacting to the previous. I generally work on about 7-8 days lag. So when I look at a set of bloods, I'm looking at an estrogen level that's from a week ago in relation to testosterone level. And I've always worked on that. But with things like Aromasin, you know, the half-life's long enough that once you get it built up in your system, as long as you're regular, you don't really have such a major concern about when you're dealing with it. It's only when you're trying to combat a estrogen spike off an injection that you may have to be a bit more critical around timing.
Yeah. I'm just looking right now, by the way, to see. So I have a client that just started his cycle, and we gave him 3 weeks with a low AI. Let's see. His test level is at 2,286 on a scale that goes to 827. And estradiol is 37, so we freaking nailed it. I'll tell you what he's taking right now, actually. Let me see here. What do we got here, Dave? 37, that scale goes to 38, so he's in the normal level, and I'll take that. I don't mind if estrogen is a little bit out of range either. I don't have a problem with that either, you know.
No, I don't mind running it a little bit high if they're symptom free, particularly if we're bulking, you know, particularly if we're on a push. Yeah. I'm quite happy to let it creep a little bit, as long as they're symptom free with it. But it has some benefits.
All right, so I think we might be using 12.5 Aromasin twice a week, and he's doing 600 test, 600 EQ, and 200 NPP. Now, I will tell you, Dave, that if I have somebody running NPP, or Deca, I'll be more likely to want to try to keep the estrogen a little bit under better control versus letting it run wild, you know?
So that doesn't seem a lot for an AI for that dosing, so you must be getting something off the EQ, I would have thought, in that situation.
I think we might be. You know, he's only a few weeks in. He's, I think, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in now.
2-3 weeks before he peaks levels. Update from China.
Yeah. Breaking news.
So breaking news. So why can't you produce? This is what I've asked. Because no other manufacturer has produced it lately. Obviously, Chinese English is better than my English Chinese, so we'll forgive them for that. Why are they not producing? Is it a law change? No, just some of the time there comes a time in every year. We've been in business for almost 20 years.
Uh-huh.
The story over here is that the USA has put pressure on the government to reduce unlicensed production. All I know is that tariffs have changed, nothing else. I've heard so far. And I've just put thank you, and they put you're welcome. Don't have to worry. Our company will be aware of any changes. So tariffs have changed. Is that a tax, do you think?
Yeah. So that's the same thing that we talked about earlier with the tariffs to Canada and to Mexico. He's also incorporating either an additional 5% or 10% tariff to China to put pressure on them for allowing fentanyl to come into the U.S. through Mexico.
So this is potentially literally an export taxation, which is going to push the prices up.
It probably will then, because they're going to have to make that up somewhere, right?
Or they, in this scenario, it just looks like they've gone around and go, we're not bothering producing it then.
For now. But they're going to want to make money, right?
Yeah, it all seems a bit weird.
Yeah.
So it's your fault.
Kind of it is, isn't it? But then it shouldn't affect the Raws going to the UK, right?
Well, yeah, I'm surprised, but we'll see how it pans out.
Oh, hey, little update. We talked about androstenedione and norandrostenedione and norandrostenediol last week. And I think I said it was the early 90s, like 91, that I took it. And somebody said Andro didn't come out until 96, 97 and was promoted in Bill Phillips' supplement review, which he used to push EAS products. So I was a little bit off on my date there, but that makes total sense. How about that, Dave?
What?
Dave wasn't listening. He was talking.
No,
he was talking to his Chinese friend.
You were wrong, so I switch off when you're wrong.
Question: do naturals have a peak week protocol, or just come in as shredded as possible?
I think some will. I think they'll still try and manipulate water to an extent in order to try and maintain as much fullness as they can. And you can definitely do it as a natural. There are natural diuretics like dandelion root, things like that, which will help. So, yeah, it's probably not going to be as tricky or as significant. I think where water manipulation comes in to a more important factor is when you're not quite lean enough.
That's where it gets trickier. Yeah.
It does, but it also has the greatest impact on the physique, because if you're not quite lean enough and you get the water right, you can look leaner than you actually are and fuller. Whereas if you get it wrong when you're not quite lean enough, you'll look fat and smooth.
Very true.
But if you're truly lean, then water retention shouldn't really be a major concern. Because if the fat cells are depleted, then there's nothing to hold the fucking water in.
Yeah. Yeah, my thought is it would be, and I do work with a lot of natural guys, especially.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. Around like 2016 or so, I had great success with a couple guys that were men's physique competitors, and they were natural. And then from there, Dave, like I had so many people locally hire me for men's physique, and a bunch of them were natural. And they've done incredible, man. Like some of these guys, man, do really freaking good. What do you have there?
I'm throwing test at you.
Oh, like a.
Be gone, naturals, be gone.
We did have a natty guy, by the way, who said, I've never used gear, but I sure love your guys' podcast. He said that just this week. Yeah, I'll tell you what, though, peak is going to be the same, regardless. Like most of the peak is going to have to do with controlling fluids, right? And controlling fullness of the muscle. And that's going to have more to do with food and water manipulation. And even for guys that aren't enhanced anymore nowadays, if we do use anything, it's going to be real mild, Even for guys that need an extreme change,
the idea don't use a diuretic. Is to take as much water out of the skin and push as much water into the muscle, so the muscle swells and the skin shrinks.
Yeah.
And generally, I've found with naturals, that's an easier process to achieve. With drug users, it gets a lot harder because you've got so many other factors going on, like hormonal fluctuations and drugs and this, that, and the other. And it can get a little bit more complex. But as a natural, that's not as hard to do. Yeah. As long as you're not a fat fuck.
All right. How about this one? I like this question. He says, "Hi, Scott and Dave. I watch every week, always. I am and I think I'm pronouncing this right, Huddersfield. I'm a Huddersfield boy. Is that how you say it, Dave? Did I say that right? Huddersfield? Huddersfield boy.
No, but you're a short bus candidate, so I'll let you off.
From a village called Emily?
Oh, Emily Moore. Right.
Emily, Emley. Emily, near Dave.
Yeah,
says,
I wouldn't say it's near me, but I can see him.
Okay. I have run a few cycles of test at 600 milligrams and no sides. I cruise on 400 milligrams, no sides. I don't know if I should up the test on my next cycle or add mast. I have only used test. What do you think I should do, and what should I go for?
So the first thing I'd be asking is, have you done any blood work when you're on... Good lad. Have you done any blood work when you're on your 400 milligram cycle cruise thing? Because there are people that will tolerate higher doses particularly well and not see anything particularly negative in bloods. Doesn't mean it's not having a negative impact on stress factors and stuff like that, but there are that. But my first question would be, is that a genuine 400 milligrams? Because I would expect to see something of a long-term exposure to that dose.
True.
So first thing I'd be asking is, are you genuinely on 400 milligrams, or is your gear a bit underdosed and actually you're on a bit less and you don't realise that? You know, have you tested your bloods? If you have, what's your test level coming back at? I've said this a million times and I'll say it again. In my opinion, the period between cycles should be maintained within natural range for 95% of most people. Because one, they don't have a muscle mass that requires extra, and two, you're just not giving your body a break from the stressors. The fitter you are, the healthier you are going into the cycle, which means reducing stress in that binging period, i.e. drug-induced stress, the more you're going to gain from the cycle you do post it. So people seem to think, oh, I'm going to bridge on 300, 350, whatever, and think it's going to be positive towards gains. It's not. You're actually going to diminish what you're going to get off your following cycle, because you're going to go into that cycle already stressed.
Yeah.
And if you're dropping, with a few exceptions, if you're dropping significant amount of muscle mass, and I don't mean just going a bit flat and losing a bit of water and glycogen because you've dropped your dose.
Like you're going to come down 10 pounds, right? You know, like no matter what, you come off cycle, you're losing water.
Yeah, I mean, at 350, 360, I would drop 15 pounds when I came off cycle. I wasn't losing any muscle mass. It was water and glycogen. I was so much bigger, so that drop was so much more significant.
Yeah.
But if you are genuinely losing muscle mass, then I would be questioning your training and your diet, because something doesn't seem to be working right. And that's the honest truth. I mean, I PCT'd, came off between every cycle apart from UC1 to UC2. That was the only time I cruised. Yeah.
People figure it out, man, but it takes time. And at the end of the day, like, we're always so worried, we're paranoid that we're going to lose tissue. You know, people don't want to come off.
No, I mean, this is where the dependency and habit forming comes. I've been approached by Jim McFay to do a study with him next year. We're waiting to see if we get funding, but it's looking at people coming off gear.
Yeah.
And one of the things we've had a lot of discussion about is, what do we regard as coming off? Because some people will need to do TRT because they no longer support lateral function.
Right.
But are we going to accept someone running a mil a week as coming off because in their head they have?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's this reality of, yeah, but you're still running your test levels at an elevated level, which really is starting to look towards some form of dependency. So as yet, we haven't answered the questions of how we're going to define everything. But because Jim was concerned that levels that people needed would vary. I said, well, to be honest, I think if you just work on, if they're in natural range, you'll accept that as being TRT and technically off from a sense of view of advancement. But we'll see what it comes back to, because it's Viv Pope's doing it as well.
Okay. Well, wasn't that fancy? And they're getting you involved too, huh?
Yeah, I'm not sure why they're getting me involved, to be honest.
How about this one? Love the show. What's your thoughts on Deca, test, and mast for a cut cycle? Deca for the joint support and mast for the drying effect. Or will the two counteract each other too much? Oh, Dave's got to take a call. he had some stuff going on for his car getting fixed? Or will the two counteract each other where neither one will be effective? I'll tell you what. So I'm working with a guy right now who's had a lot of joint issues, and he's had like 2 major problems. He's been getting it worked on. He's been seeing a tissue therapist, and they're figuring out the root cause of what the problem has been. So he's been keeping up on his mobility, and he's continued to see his tissue person. That said, I said, hey, what do you think about maybe trying a low dose of Deca just to get it in there to see, hey, do we get any benefit from this? So he gets on the Deca and he is finding it helpful. And we reached a point where it didn't make sense to continue pushing up. So as a result, he's still on this low dose of Deca. Plus we're on test, and we may have one other compound in it. I have to look. But we've been now recomping and we've been pulling back. And the Deca is low enough. If you keep that Deca low, like what do you really need to get benefit from joints? Maybe 100 milligrams. 200 is probably more than enough. And if you've got the diet right, you're doing everything you need to, you're going to be totally fine. Like you're not going to get too soft, too wet from Deca. Man, I mean, unless you were doing a contest prep, I would say just continue running it all the way through. It wouldn't be a problem. But I'm talking low dose Deca. Hey, Dave, was that your car people?
Yes, it was. They're keeping it overnight.
Oh, that's not fun.
No, they think there's a battery issue, so they want to put it on a slow charge overnight and see if it holds.
The longer they keep it, that usually means the more expensive it's going to be. You know what I mean?
It's a lease car. It's not costing me a penny.
Hey, I like the sounds of that.
Yeah, so do I.
What do you think about running a cut cycle with Deca, Test, and Mast? Deca for joints.
It's all possible. You just make things more complex from a management point of view. Obviously, you're going to have to be much more on board with estrogen management, prolactin management, etc. If you're talking Deca at a really low dose, like 100 milligrams, you're probably not going to have too many issues. I mean, technically, you can cut in on any drug, but certain compounds do make the management much more difficult, which is why we tend to go for DHTs in a cut and such like, because then we just don't have to worry about estrogen. It's not a problem because we ain't got none.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, technically you can. How I liken this is if I want to knock a nail into a wall, I can knock that nail in with a heavy screwdriver, just use the handle. I can knock it in with a heavy spanner. It will do the job, but it might make it more labor intensive from my point of view in the fact that I have to hit it more times.
What's a spanner?
But I'll still wrench.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But if I use a hammer, I'll get it in quickly and efficiently. And this is very much like your choice of drugs. You can achieve most things with any drug, but some don't quite lend themselves ideally to the situation, which means it requires more work from you to get through that process if you're insisting on using that drug. And this is one of them scenarios. If Deca's super low, then yeah, I could see it not having too much of an issue. You may have a bit more of an issue around estrogen and prolactin management, but other than that, I don't see there being a major problem. But that's why we tend not to use wet drugs in cuts, because we don't want to make more work for ourselves than we need to.
All right, let's see if we can. I want to make sure we get to. We've got one in the live stream and one more question. I want to make sure we get to these. What are the effects of not having a gallbladder on bodybuilding? I had mine removed in 2020. I'm running Test, Deca Cycle currently, 350 milligrams of each. Things are going well, but it's taking me 75 milligrams of Aromasin per week to control the estrogen. I'm 41 years old and pretty lean. My last bloods had E2 at 60 the day after 25 milligrams of Aromasin.
What's he running cycle-wise again? Sorry, I missed that.
It's, let's see, 350 each of Deca and Test. No gallbladder.
If he's having to run a lot of Aromasin, I'd probably switch up to Adex, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's a stronger AI, and it's going to be more efficient at the job. There's always that question of whether his Aromasin is legit. It may well be. I don't know where he sourced it from. If it is, then I think you're just going to have to use a stronger compound to manage it. It's as simple as that.
Do you remember when a while back I went off talking about glucuronidation?
Yes.
That's the process of preparing waste hormones like estrogen to be, it prepares it to be removed. And there's a compound called beta-glucuronidase that comes around and it will undo the work pretty much. Here's the deal is that the gallbladder and the liver, that combo is producing a lot of our enzymes that are not only breaking down foods, especially like fatty foods, but they're also responsible for breaking down hormones. So this guy absolutely needs to be on, first of all, some type of a digestive enzyme. You know, he's going to need to only do low-fat diet type stuff. I work with a number of people that have had their gallbladder removed, or they have like dysfunction of the gallbladder, which if you still have your gallbladder, don't get rid of it. We can work around it. We can like ease the stress on it, and that you're better off keeping it and getting your health in check with it. But then let's support your body with everything that it needs. So not only do we need the enzymes, but then we need the ability to carry those things throughout the body, basically. So things like astragalus would be really beneficial. But the number one thing, though, I would say, though, is the enzyme, and then let's get rid of the estrogen. I have a feeling his estrogen isn't high because he has like high conversion. He's just having a hard time eliminating it. This would be a perfect case for, number one, using calcium deglucarate. I would start that at 2,000 milligrams. Get your estrogen checked 2 weeks later. See where that's at. Maybe even go a little bit higher than that. That's an aggressive dose, by the way. But I would start at 2,000 given his situation. I wouldn't even touch the AI at first. I would also get on something with it, like a digestive enzyme that has ox bile in it. That I like, super enzymes by Now Foods. And that contains everything for your digestive enzymes, plus some plant stuff, plus ox bile. And that ox bile will help you to break down fats, especially. So I'd get those things in play and really support your digestion. Make sure you're getting like plenty of good green vegetables in there. And then maybe even like from there, look at DIM. Something like DIM wouldn't be a bad idea to supplement with, because I think that you're up against a lot of issues if you don't have your gallbladder. You know, the doctor is going to tell you don't need your gallbladder. It's fine. It doesn't do anything. Your gallbladder does a freaking lot when it comes down to breaking down hormones and breaking down fats. So imagine, Dave, like if your body doesn't process fats properly, then you're screwed as far as turning cholesterols into hormones. You know what I'm saying? So
that's why I'm fat.
That would be my thought, though. That's one of those advanced situations that I've been really passionate about learning about in the past couple of years. One more. So quick, could you speak on how quick you can get EQ working in different categories, like helping with estrogen and starting to steal some positives in your lifting and vascularity? I think he means starting to see some positives.
Well, vascularity is going to come from condition. So if you're a fat fuck and you take EQ, you're not suddenly going to get vascular.
Yeah.
The big increase in vascularity is in part to do with its effect on blood itself, i.e. the increase of hemoglobin, etc. I mean, these drugs start working straight away. Well, within 24 hours, they're going to be in your system and having an impact. The time delay on a lot of things is the downstream of that when you start to feel it, but it will actually be doing something from very day one. So I'm not sure what he means in the sense of how quick you can get EQ working. Because there's lots of factors that play into this. I mean, first of all, EQ isn't necessarily going to be negative on estrogen in everybody. We've seen that. We know that. I believe actually in vitro there's a small conversion of EQ to estrogen in a lab environment.
Yeah, I believe there is. It's at a much lower rate than testosterone, right?
Yeah, but it does actually aromatize slightly in a lab environment, but it doesn't seem to be replicated in people in the same way. And it seems to vary significantly in people as to how impacting it can be. So But, you know, the drug's going to be working within 24, 36 hours. That effect is going to build over time depending on the dosing and how long it takes to peak within your bloodstream. Most drugs, 5, 6, 7 weeks, they'll hit peak with most dosings. So you're not going to speed that process up in any way. But obviously you take a higher dose, you're going to feel the impact sooner.
Yeah.
Because the circulating level is going to get higher quicker, but you're still going to peak at that sort of period of time. And it doesn't change the speed at which the drug's working. It just speeds up the impact because you get into a higher level much quicker. But I'm not really sure what else to say on that. I'm a bit confused by the question. Maybe it's just my brain not working right.
I think he's trying to say, like, hey, I want to, use... So if you started like a test EQ cycle and you're saying, all right, so I hear everybody's talking about using EQ for estrogen management. How long is it going to take me to see that? Also, how long is it going to take me to get that? I wonder, Dave, I think that some of that vascularity from EQ is related to higher hematocrit. If you have more blood, it's going to definitely pump through your veins and look a lot crazier. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. The hemoglobin volumization of the blood is going to is literally going to result in an engorging of the veins.
Yeah. So
they're going to be more visible than they were previously. But at the end of the day, you're not going to see vascularity unless you're lean enough for that vascularity to show.
Yeah.
So condition's always going to be a deciding factor there.
So that guy with the estrogen levels, he's 3 or 4 weeks into his cycle. Top range is 39. He's at 37. He's on 600 test, 600 EQ, and 300 NPP. So I just looked what I have him doing. He's running 8.75 milligrams of Aromasin every other day. So it's probably the Aromasin that's keeping that under control.
You think?
For the most part, yeah.
I wouldn't have said Aromasin would have been that effective.
He's only a few weeks in, Yeah,
I mean, all right, estrogen levels are still going to be climbing. I can't see... I mean, if that dose of Aromasin sustains him at those estrogen levels on that dosing, then in my head, anyway, I would say the EQ is having a positive effect in lowering estrogen.
It potentially is. I would agree. I'm not going to say it's not,
I would expect as that level of test and Deca, MPP, whatever you want to call it, that you would need slightly more than that to control that estrogen-wise.
He is using 1,000 calcium deglucarate too.
Well, that's going to have some impact as well.
So I'm happy with that, man. I feel like
it's in a good spot. But there is a possibility that estrogen's going to go higher over the next 2-3 weeks as everything starts to level out.
Yeah. I think we're 3-4 weeks in. I wanted to get it tested after we've had a few weeks under our belt to kind of see, all right, where are we at, and see if we need to make any adjustments, because sometimes you could be way off, but I feel like we nailed it.
He's currently in a very good spot.
What do you have going on, Dave, for Uncle David's advice, wisdom? You got anything special for us prepared today that you've been thinking about on your your private time, writing in your journal or anything? Like some nice little, thoughtful wisdom from Dave, Uncle Dave. Uncle.
I'm thinking. I haven't prepared anything as usual because I'm a slack ass. And I've had actually a couple of particularly testing weeks.
Really?
But, just shit going wrong.
The car's broken.
Nothing. Oh, don't. The bloody van cost me £600 nearly today for its MOT.
That's not fun.
And then my truck had to go in for an MOT last week, and then our lasses is in for a service today, and then I've then got to get the repairs done on the truck next week, and then the bus is in tomorrow for work. Oh, it's just...
What's MOT? Does that have to do with emissions?
No, it's part of it, but it's basically a safety certificate that has to be annually issued to a car to say it's fit to drive on the road.
Yeah, we don't do that here.
No, I know you don't. Yeah, it's great.
You do it when you first get the car, like if you buy a used car, it needs to be certified and all that, but after that, you're good to go.
No, it's annual here on any car that's over 3 years old.
You can cut your catalytic converter off and just run a straight pipe if you wanted.
Or if the car is over a certain age, they become MOT exempt.
Oh, okay. Huh.
So older cars are MOT exempt as well. I sort of have something and I don't, so I think I'm going to have to pass because I think it's going to be a hash if I try and get it out of my head in the way it is. Well,
it could be something easy, you know, like make sure you call your mom.
Yeah, make sure you call your mom.
There you go, guys. Make sure you call your mom. You heard Dave say it himself. Anything coming up with Evo?
Oh yeah, I've got other stuff going on, definitely. So we're opening a full-time clinic in Ultraflex Derby on the 1st of December. We have a new venue in Stoke-ish, well, it's Newcastle under Lyme, which is actually near Stoke. And Destination Gym, we're going to be there on a regular basis moving forward as well. So that's those two things. No, I can't say anything about that one. Sorry. Got to be quiet about that one.
Well, all right.
There's a couple of other things we're working on, but unfortunately I can't say anything yet because I don't know if they're definitely going to be going ahead. So I'd rather not say in case they don't. Yeah. But we're looking at some other things as well through eval.
What about are you doing Pillars of Strength anytime soon? New one?
What I'm doing at the moment is taking deposits. So I've got 2 people interested. I need 6 in order to run it, ideally 10. So as soon as I get the numbers, I'll put one on. But I think with it starting literally getting quite close to Christmas now. I think for the most part, it's probably going to end up waiting until January before we start it. But
all right, so you could ask your significant other to, you know, sign you up for Pillars of Strength, right?
Christmas present, yeah. Yeah, so I don't really have anything. I generally don't. I've just not thought of anything. I do apologize.
That's all right. You told us to call our moms. We'll all do that. And, of course, guys, check out supplementsource.ca for our Canadian folk. And go to Strom Sports Nutrition. You can get great health and performance supplements there. Plus, you can get joint supplements for your dog. You guys got to take care of your dog. Take your dog out today, all right? That's my advice. Take your dog for a walk. Do something for someone else and have that someone else be your dog. Your dog loves you so much, guys. So give your dog what your dog deserves. And, of course, go check out Dave and I on social media. I'll have links to that below. And you can reach out to us for coaching, consultations. We'd be happy to work with you guys. Right, Dave? Yes?
Yeah, my new coaching app launches a couple of weeks.
Coaching app? You don't know how to press buttons on a phone?
No, Tony, my social girl's doing it.
Oh, okay.
No, so what it is, it's basically a low budget, more of a lifestyle, client-based oriented thing. So it's not very drug driven. It's not heavy diets. It's about making small changes to just improve yourself.
Okay, a really great way to sell it when your first words are low budget. We're going to have to have a talk about this.
Right. So look, this is the situation. All right. People look at coaching, they look at improving their lifestyle, but they don't particularly value it. So it's something they want to do, but not if it's going to cost them a lot of money. And then that same willingness of financial expenditure also revolves around their effort expenditure. So they don't really want to put a huge amount into it, but they do want to do something to improve how they are.
Yeah.
So the idea of this coaching is it costs you £1 a day. It's purely online, done through the app, and it will give you little steps you can do to become a better version of yourself. So it's not going to be you have to stick to this super diet. It's going to give you meal choices. It's going to give you some flexibility around food, calorie based, but you can go into it and say, look, I don't want to eat that diet. Give me another one, and it will give you another one.
Okay.
And it will also do things like if you're going out to a restaurant, if it can do it, it will scan the menu and give you some choices to try and fit that meal within your diet as best it can.
Okay.
And it's same with the training. You can be, look, I'm not up for a proper workout today. Just give me a 60-minute quick blast. And it will give you a 60-minute quick blast. So it's about filling that gap between full-blown coaching where, you know, with people are expected to follow diets and strict training programs, and people that do want to change but aren't convinced at this stage that they're going to invest either money or time into it in a big way. The hope is that once they start being a little bit more conscious about themselves and they make a few small changes that they see benefit from, they'll then get a little bit more enthused about being a bit more committed, and they may move through to more, you know, a more in-depth coaching. But this is to fill that gap for people that just want something to help that isn't going to overface them with, oh yes, you have to have these 5 meals a day and you have to do this training program.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, something is better than nothing.
Okay. Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea. And especially for people that are just looking to kind of dip their toes in and maybe clean things up without the commitment of, you know, hiring a coach like myself or you to go full bore into a plan. So, hey, if people want to take any step, I say more power to you. In fact, we're getting close to 2025 now. If you're watching this as it comes out, I want you guys to start thinking about, hey, what are the changes I want to make for 2025? Because now is the time to start thinking about that. And I'm not saying like, oh, you're going to have a New Year's resolution type thing, but I do believe in setting intentions and, you know, making real changes in your life, employing these things through a new year. I've got a couple already. Yes.
It's natural that at the beginning of any form of cycle, a cycle of time, so beginning of the week, beginning of the month, beginning of the year, that it's a natural point to both set new plans or set new projects in the same way that at the end of something, it's a natural time to reflect.
Yeah.
And the year is quite a significant period because we have a lot of holidays around it. We celebrate the new year. We celebrate the end of the year. And so as a result, we also see a lot of reflective programming. You know, it'll be the hits from the year or this year's, you know, greatest moments in this sport or that thing or the other thing. So it's only natural that we reflect. There's nothing wrong with New Year's resolutions. Most of them get broken. Most of us break them to some degree. But it's still an ideal opportunity to start because there's such a positivity from everybody about trying to make changes.
Agreed. 100%. We'll talk about that more, I'm sure, as the new year gets closer. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in for another episode of Jokes and Stuff with Dave Crosland. We'll see you soon, and leave us questions for the next episode. That includes the guy who got upset with me. If you leave us your question, I really will try. In fact, when you leave your question again, you can even comment and be like, this is the question you didn't answer 3 times, Scott. And I'll be sure to ignore you. I mean, I'll be sure to try and get to you next time. So we'll see you guys.
If you don't put, this is the question you haven't answered 3 times, Scott, you tosspot, it won't get answered.
All right, guys, we'll see you. Thanks for watching.
Bye.